A governor sits at his desk signing another death warrant. He's a veteran of the U.S. Navy. The man he's sending to the execution chamber, he wore the same flag on his shoulder. How did two people who once served their country end up on opposite sides of the needle? No sources needed yet. This is just the hook. Ron DeSantis built part of his political brand on his military service. He served in the U.S. Navy as a judge advocate general, a military lawyer, and deployed to Iraq in 2007 as a legal advisor to Navy SEAL Team 1. He also served at Guantanamo Bay. Source, factcheck.org. DeSantis military records summarized on Wikipedia and Soldier of Fortune. Factcheck.org +2, Soldier of Fortune magazine +2. Fast forward, he's now the governor of Florida. In 2025, Florida shattered its own modern record for executions. By November, reporting showed at least 15 executions in a single year, with more warrants signed and scheduled. Florida leads the nation in executions this year. Sources: The Guardian, AP, New York Post, other death penalty coverage. New York Post +3, The Guardian +3, The Guardian +3. Here's the twist. A big share of the people Florida is executing are military veterans, men who once wore the same uniform DeSantis did. A new 2025 report from the Death Penalty Information Center called Forgotten Service, Lasting Wounds finds that about 200 military veterans are currently on death row across the U.S., and 1 in 7 people executed in the modern era has been a veteran. Death Penalty Information Center +2. Death Penalty Information Center +2. That report names Florida as an outlier. The state has sentenced at least 117 veterans to death since the 1970s, more than any other state, and in 2025, it has executed 5 veterans already, with more veterans scheduled to die. Death Penalty Information Center local reporting backs that up. An Axios analysis found that in 2025, veterans made up about 1/3 of the 15 people Florida executed under DeSantis. Axios, this isn't just a Florida problem, it's a national pattern. The U.S. government estimates that veterans are roughly 6% of American adults, but they're a bigger slice of the prison population. Around 8% of people in state prisons are veterans. Federal and state data show that more than 100,000 veterans are in prisons and jails in the United States. Around 107,000 according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics survey of prison inmates. On death row, the numbers are even starker. The death penalty. Information Center says about 200 veterans are on death row today, roughly 10% of the death row population, even though veterans are only about 6% of the public, and about 14% of everyone executed in the modern era has been a veteran. That's roughly 1 in 7. So when a governor signs a death warrant, the odds aren't small that the person on the receiving end once wore the same uniform and heard the same words. Thank you for your service. Let's tell the story of one man. We'll call him Marcus. Marcus grows up in a small town. At 18, he enlists in the army. He deploys twice. He sees roadside bombs, friends killed, civilians hurt. He comes home with invisible wounds. The details of Marcus's story are a composite, but they're built from patterns you see again and again in the research. Combat exposure, PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, addiction, homelessness, and then contact with the justice system. Sources: VA and DOJ research on justice-involved veterans and mental health. VA research +2, Department of Justice +2. Marcus can't sleep. He has flashbacks. He starts drinking to quiet his mind, then moves to pills. Many veterans get good care, but others, especially especially those with less than honorable or so-called bad paper discharges, hit a wall trying to access VA benefits. The Justice Department notes that about a quarter of incarcerated veterans have these kinds of discharges, which makes it harder to get the care they earned. Department of Justice +1. Marcus bounces between couches. Then he's homeless. One night, in the middle of a breakdown, a flashback, or a blackout, something terrible happens. A robbery, a fight, a shooting, a life is lost. The jury sees the crime, they see the body, but they may never hear the full story of his time in uniform or his trauma or what untreated PTSD does to a brain over years. The DPIC report finds that in many capital cases, juries never hear detailed evidence about a veteran's service or injuries. Death Penalty Information Center +1. None of this excuses violent crime, but if we want to understand why so many veterans are in jail and on death row, we have to talk about trauma. A VA study found that veterans with PTSD are about 60% more likely to have some form of criminal justice involvement than veterans without PTSD. Justice Department and VA data show that about 1 in 4 male veterans in state prison and 1 in 5 in federal prison are combat veterans. Many are older, 55 or above, still carrying wounds from wars fought decades ago. A significant share of incarcerated veterans also have a history of homelessness, alcohol dependence, or drug misuse, often tied to untreated mental health conditions. Researchers and advocates have started calling this the battlefield to prison pipeline, a path where combat injuries, PTSD, TBIs, addiction, poverty, and aggressive policing all intersect. That exact phrase appears in the Death Penalty Information Center's 2025 report on veterans and the death penalty. Now, bring it back to Florida. The 2025 DPIC report says Florida has sentenced more veterans to death than any other state, at least 117 since the 1970s, and that Florida conducted over 2/3 of the executions of veterans in 2025. Death Penalty Information Center +1 investigative outlet The War Horse reports that while veterans are about 12% of Florida's death row, they made up nearly 40% of the death warrants DeSantis signed in 2025. The War Horse local public radio station, WLRN, reports that since DeSantis took office, at least 5 veterans, Bobby Joe Long, Dwayne Owen, Edward James, Jeffrey Hutchinson, and Edward Zakrzewski have been executed, and that around 30 veterans are currently on Florida's death row. ULRN Axios found that in 2025, veterans made up about 1/3 of the 15 people executed in Florida under DeSantis. Axios veteran advocacy groups have written open letters to DeSantis saying you cannot claim to be the most veteran-friendly state while executing so many veterans. One letter signed by 160 veterans called him out directly on this point. Axios +2, WLRN +2. DeSantis's team, on the other hand, argues that he is enforcing the law and that justice for victims comes first. So you end up with this haunting image. A Navy veteran governor signing death warrants for other veterans. Both swore an oath. Both wore the cloth of the nation. One came home and rose to power. The other came home with invisible wounds and fell into the cracks until the system met him with a needle. So when we ask, why are so many veterans in jail? There's no single answer. But the research points to a few major pieces: untreated PTSD and moral injury. Trauma from combat can reshape the brain and nervous system. A VA study says veterans with PTSD are about 60% more likely to have justice system involvement. Source: VA research. VA research +1, traumatic brain injuries, TBIs. Blast injuries and concussions are common in modern war and are linked to impaired judgment and impulse control. Source: Justice-Involved Veterans Mental Health Reports. Council of Accountability Court Judges +1. Addiction and self-medication. Many justice-involved veterans report using alcohol or drugs to cope, and studies show high rates of substance misuse among incarcerated veterans. Council of Accountability Court Judges +2, lincolnc.org +2, homelessness and poverty. Veterans are overrepresented among people experiencing homelessness, and about 30% plus of justice-involved veterans report serious housing instability. Source: DOJ, VA, and related studies. The Warhorse +2 Council of Accountability Court Judges +2 bad paper, discharges, and denied care. Roughly 1 in 4 incarcerated veterans has a less than honorable discharge, which can block access to VA services right when they need them most. Source: DOJ Access to Justice Fact Sheet. Department of Justice +1 Courts that don't hear the whole story. DPIC's 2025 report finds that in many capital cases involving veterans, juries never hear detailed evidence about their service, PTSD, TBIs, or moral injury, even though the Supreme Court has said military service is powerful mitigation. Death Penalty Information Center +2, Death Penalty Information Center +2. None of this erases what victims and their families have suffered, but it raises a hard question. What responsibility does a nation bear for the damage war does to its own soldiers, especially when it later judges them in courtrooms and execution chambers? Governor DeSantis likes to say Florida is the most veteran-friendly state in the nation. But when your state leads the nation in executing veterans, and when 1/3 of the people you execute in a year served in the military, a lot of veterans and advocates say that claim rings hollow. Maybe the real test of how we treat veterans isn't the Veterans Day speeches or the campaign ads with old deployment photos. Maybe the real test is what happens when those veterans break down, fall apart, and fall into the criminal justice system. What do you think? Should military service and war-related trauma weigh more heavily in sentencing? Is it hypocritical for a veteran governor to execute veterans? Or is the law no matter who you are? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you want more deep dives like this, hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it.